Hello Pokepals, welcome back to another video. Shrouded Fable is the latest Pokemon TCG expansion and was released on August 2nd, 2024. Despite being a special TCG expansion, the smaller set list has many interesting cards for the format Gym Leader Challenge that are worth looking at. If you are not familiar with the Gym Leader Challenge, or GLC, you can check out gymleaderchallenge.com to learn more about this format and its rules. As usual, I'll skip all cards not legal for GLC to save time. Let's begin by mowing through the grass types. The new grass type Galvantula is playable because the set also introduced the first grass type Joltik. It has the ability Compound Eyes. Attacks used by this Pokemon do 50 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon that has an ability. Its attack, Shocking Web, deals 50 base damage. If this Pokemon has any lightning energy attached, this attack does 80 more damage. 130 damage knocks out most basic attackers. If the opposing active Pokemon has an ability, and most good GLC Pokemon do, you can reach 180 damage, which is enough to knock out almost every Pokemon not named Wailord. It is a solid attacker for grass decks. The new Decidueye has an attack, Strong Shot, that deals 170 damage for 1 grass energy that requires discarding 1 grass energy from hand. Decks that require very little energy could use Decidueye as a strong attacker. The new Dartrix has the United Wings attack, which is irrelevant in GLC since it is a singleton monotype format. The new Rowlet can be useful to draw a card, though I still like Sky Circus Rowlet for its damage potential. Tapu Bulu has the attack Woodhammer. For 2 grass and 2 colorless energy, it deals 220 damage and 30 recoil damage. This immediately fits into some Rillaboom Venusaur decks as a basic attacker to replace Wo-Chien and knock out most Pokemon through Luxurious Cape. For most other grass decks, the attack cost is a bit prohibitive, and Tapu Bulu doesn't do anything else. Burning our way to fire types, we have Houndoom. For a fire and 2 colorless energy, Snarl deals 100 damage and reduces damage from the defending Pokemon by 100. Effects of attacks are removed when the Pokemon moves out of the active spot, so this kind of attack is usually unreliable. Therefore, Houndoom is not recommended for serious play. Iron Moth has the attack Wild Rejector. For 2 fire and 1 colorless energy, it deals 120 damage and prevents all damage done to itself by ancient Pokemon, which is not that useful for GLC. Its first attack, Suction, deals 30 damage and heals damage equal to the amount of damage dealt to the opposing active Pokemon. With damage modifiers like Muscle Band and Heat Boost Rapidash, you can get significant healing. This card is about average, but it has some upside. Splashing into water types, we have Seadra. It has the attack Call for Backup, which searches the deck for 3 Pokemon. This seems good, but it pales in comparison to Alolan Vulpix, which only searches for 2 Pokemon, but is a basic Pokemon and requires no energy. Still, the new Seadra is playable if you want to play Kingdra. Weavile has the attack Hail Claw. For 2 water energy, it deals 70 damage, discards all energy attached, and the opposing active Pokemon is paralyzed. Paralysis is one of the strongest status conditions in the Pokemon TCG since it prevents the paralyzed Pokemon from attacking and retreating. The only way to play around it is to play a switch card or a card that heals status conditions. Snorlax is notable since it can't be paralyzed by an attack. Most decks play multiple switch cards, but Weavile can work in strategies that consistently paralyze the opponent alongside similar Pokemon like Articuno and Vanillix. This card is good, but its strength varies depending on how much counterplay exists in the meta. Unfortunately, this set does not have lightning type cards legal for GLC. Teleporting to our psychic types, Hypno has the attack Daydream, which deals 80 damage. During your opponent's next turn, if they attach an energy card from their hand to the defending Pokemon, their turn ends. As before with Houndoom, this kind of attack is usually unreliable. This card won't see much play, especially with better Hypno cards like Psy Call Hypno and Hypnotic Pendulum Hypno. The next card is one of the more impactful cards for standard play from this set. Dusclops with the ability Cursed Blast. Once during your turn, you may put 5 damage counters on one of your opponent's Pokemon. If you use this ability, this Pokemon is knocked out. Giving your opponent free prize cards seems like a bad idea, but it actually has numerous benefits. Many cards like Counter Energy work better when you have more prize cards remaining. Dusclops is especially good because there exists a Duskull card with the ability Spirit-Born Evolution that allows it to evolve the turn it is played, which means you can use Dusclops on your first turn, potentially multiple times. Dusclops pairs well alongside cards like Mysterious Message Mismagius and Fireworks Bomb Blacephalon, to the point that it may cause at least one card to be banned. I will do a follow-up video for this card with an example deck list. Dusknoir is also good, with a similar ability that places 13 damage counters instead of 5. It's not as easy to cycle as Dusclops, but it has higher damage potential by itself. Cresselia has a unique attack in Crescent Purge, which deals 80 damage for 3 psychic energy. You may turn one of your face-down prize cards face-up. If you do, this attack does 80 more damage. In a singleton format like GLC, prize card knowledge is usually a benefit, so you will almost always choose to turn over a prize card. The attack cost is a little restrictive, especially since it does not work well with Dimension Valley. Regardless, energy acceleration like Malamar and Xatu make Cresselia a useful Pokemon in most Psychic decks. Punching through to the fighting type, Toxicroak has the attack Clean Hit. For a fighting and 2 colorless energy, it deals 90 base damage, and if your opponent's active Pokemon is an evolution Pokemon, this attack does 90 more damage. GLC has a lot of good basic attackers, so the attack is not that reliable. Unless you need an answer to a specific Pokemon or matchup, I recommend sticking to other attackers with more reliable or cheaper attacks. Blood Moon Ursaluna has the ability Battle Hardened. When you play this Pokemon from your hand onto your bench during your turn, you may attach up to 2 basic fighting energy cards from your hand to this Pokemon. This ability is similar to that of Galarian Zapdos and is useful for accelerating energy into play. With multiple energy search cards in the format like Professor's Letter and Earthen Vessel, it is easy to put Ursaluna into play with enough energy to attack on the same turn. Its attack is good for how easy it is to set up, so Ursaluna is a solid fighting attacker. Slitherwing has 2 attacks. Iron Smasher deals 20 base damage and 120 more damage if your opponent has any future Pokemon in play. Future Pokemon are not popular in GLC, so this attack is lackluster. Its second attack, Smashing Wing, deals 130 damage for 2 fighting and 1 colorless energy. This attack is average, and is not as good as Burning Turbulence on another Slitherwing card. I don't expect this card to see play over the other Slitherwing for now. Shining Light on the Dark type. The new Crobat card has the ability Shadowy Envoy. Once during your turn, if you play Janine's Secret Art from your hand this turn, you may draw cards until you have 8 cards in your hand. We'll talk about this supporter later. You can only play 1 copy of each card, so it can be hard to take advantage of this ability multiple times in a game without trade-offs like using Via Seeker on a different supporter card. Its attack, Poison Fang, is just okay considering Crobat is a Stage 2 Pokemon. There are other Crobat cards like Drastic Draw Crobat and Critical Bite Crobat that have their own strengths, but the new Crobat can be useful alongside some poison damage support and cards like Palpad that can cycle Janine's Secret Art for a second use. The new Absol card has the attack Dark Fall, which maxes out at 70 damage. I don't recommend playing this card. Zoroark has the attack Illusory Hijacking, which deals more damage for opposing EX and V Pokemon. Such Pokemon are not legal in GLC, so I recommend playing other Zoroark cards over this one. Malamar has the attack Colluding Tentacles, which switches in an opponent's benched Pokemon and deals 120 damage to the new active Pokemon, only if you played Xerozic's Machinations the same turn. Finding the supporter to use this attack is not reliable, and same with trying to use this attack multiple times, so I don't recommend playing this card. Yveltal has the attack Corrosive Winds. For 1 dark energy, put 2 damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon that has any damage counters on it. This Yveltal can be useful in dark spread damage strategies. Polishing up the metal type, Genesect has the ability Ace Nullifier. If this Pokemon has a Pokemon tool attached, your opponent can't play any A-Spec cards from their hand. A-Spec cards are not legal in GLC, so this card is just an average metal basic attacker. Dialga and Zamazenta perform the same role and are better. Copperajah has the attack Nasal Lariat. For 3 metal and 1 colorless energy, it deals 130 base damage. You may do 100 more damage, but if you do during your next turn, this Pokemon can't attack. Its ability, Massive Body, makes it so that as long as this Pokemon is in the active spot, your opponent can't play any stadium cards from their hand. Copperajah has 200 HP, making it a bulky attacker with high damage potential. You can use stadium cards like Full Metal Lab and Crystal Cave to make it more difficult to remove, and the metal type has numerous useful tools for the same function. The attack cost is steep, but metal decks have multiple energy accelerators like Metal Maker Metang and Metal Lynx Bronzong to make up for this. Copperajah is a good solid card, and may see play in the future as metal decks get more consistent. The set introduces a useful Varoom card. It is the first one with 70 HP and 1 retreat cost, which matters for some damage calculations. I still prefer spinning Draw Varoom to draw out of bad hands, but the new version is also useful. With a roar, here come the dragons. Haxorus has the attack Dragon Pulse, which deals 230 damage for 1 fighting and 1 metal energy. It also has the attack Bring Down the Axe. If your opponent's active Pokemon has any special energy attached, it is knocked out. This attack is especially good against Pokemon that rely on special energy like Special Waves Wailord. The damage potential of Dragon Pulse makes Haxorus a well-rounded attacker. It might not see play yet since it is a Stage 2 Pokemon, but the card is decent in a slower meta. Kyurem is another highly impactful card. It has the ability Plasma Bane. If your opponent has any cards in their discard pile that have Colorless in the name, this Pokemon can use the Trifrost attack for 1 colorless energy. Trifrost normally has an attack cost of 2 water, 2 metal, and 1 colorless energy. This attack does 110 damage to 3 of your opponent's Pokemon. The attack is broken, but its attack cost is prohibitive. GLC has 3 legal supporters with Colress in the name. Colress, Colress's Experiment, and Colress's Tenacity, all of which are useful. The new Kyurem card is game-changing at the competitive level because it will push players to not leave any Colress cards in the discard pile or play bench protection. Basic bench protection abilities are good against Kyurem because Silent Lab, the counter to basic Pokemon abilities, also stops Kyurem itself. Still, this card may cause people to exclude Colress cards from their deck list entirely. While Kyurem itself might not be used in most games, it will have a lasting effect on deck lists and gameplay at the highest level. Painting the colorless type, we have Persian, which is a below average Pokemon that I can't recommend anyone use. At least play Rocket Call Persian if you like this Pokemon. Eevee has the attack Colorful Catch, which searches the deck for 3 basic energy cards of different types and puts them into your hand. While Eevee cannot evolve in GLC due to the single type restriction, its attack may be useful alongside Pokemon that rely on many types of energy like Smeargle and Kecleon. The card is certainly not good, but it has niche use cases. Furfrou is not recommended for serious play. 1 basic energy acceleration is not enough when that's all it can do. Beware is also not recommended for serious play. Hammer In is a decent attack, but why use Beware when basic attackers like Snorlax and Cyclizar can deal more damage for the same amount of energy? As usual, I skipped most not fully evolved Pokemon since most of them are not that important. Sylveon is a fully evolved Pokemon that evolves from a different typed Pokemon, namely the colorless type Eevee. Such Pokemon are difficult to put into play normally and are usually not worth the effort of doing so in GLC. That's it for the Pokemon. Let's take a look at the trainer cards. Academy at Night is a stadium card. Once during each player's turn, that player may put a card from their hand on top of their deck. This card has a few different use cases. Some cards have effects when drawn for turn like Emergency Entry Metagross and Pokemon with the ability Top Entry, so the stadium card can place it from hand on top of the deck. Some cards require searching from the deck like Solar Evolution Skiploom. If Jumpluff is in hand, you can place it on top of the deck and evolve Skiploom using its ability. Finally, some cards have additional effects if the top card of the deck is special. For example, Gutsy Pickaxe can accelerate energy if the top card of the deck is a basic fighting energy. To be clear, Academy at Night is not a strong, powerful stadium card, but it is useful in the right strategy. Binding Mochi is a tool card. Attacks used by the poison Pokemon this card is attached to do 40 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. Self-poison is not a common strategy, but it can be achieved with Pokemon like Brute Bonnet or trainer cards like Janine's Secret Art, which we'll get to soon. Binding Mochi is perhaps the best damage modifying card for the self-poison strategy since it is twice as strong as Muscle Band. This card will see play almost exclusively in decks employing this strategy. Cassiopeia is a supporter. You can use this card only when it is the last card in your hand. Search your deck for up to 2 cards and put them into your hand. This card can be useful alongside many cards that require discards, like Ultra Ball and Quick Ball, to give the highest chance that Cassiopeia is the last card in hand. In most strategies though, this card is not consistent. The card Teammates has a similar effect but tends to be less restrictive since knockouts happen frequently. Outside of a couple of niche decks, I don't anticipate seeing much of this card in competitive play. Colress's Tenacity. Search your deck for a stadium card and an energy card and put them into your hand. Outside of Guzma and Hala and teammates, there are very few supporters that can reliably search for special energy in stadium cards, so this card can be very useful. However, it is hard to justify playing when Dragon is one of the best types, and Kyurem can take advantage of this card being in the discard pile. I can see this card played in some decks with bench protection and multiple special energy in stadium cards. Janine's Secret Art is a supporter card. Choose up to 2 of your dark Pokemon. For each of those Pokemon, search your deck for a basic dark energy card and attach it to that Pokemon. If you attached energy to your active Pokemon in this way, it is now poisoned. Accelerating multiple energy is useful in most dark decks, and the potential self-poison can be useful with Pokemon like Galarian Slowbro or other cards like Binding Mochi. It's a good card that will see some play immediately. Night Stretcher is an item card. Put a Pokemon or a basic energy card from your discard pile into your hand. There are numerous recovery cards in GLC, the most similar being Rescue Stretcher. Recovery to hand is generally strong, so I anticipate seeing immediate play for this card in GLC. Power Glass is a tool card. At the end of your turn, if the Pokemon this card is attached to is in the active spot, you may attach a basic energy card from your discard pile to it. This card is useful if you go first even though you can't attack. Even if you go second, the energy acceleration is useful if your opponent isn't able to take a knockout. In the late game, this card looks to be a bit slow, so I would try to use this on decks that set up quickly and attack for just a few energy. Xerozic's Machinations is a supporter card. Your opponent discards cards from their hand until they have 3 cards in their hand. This is a card designed for control strategies. There are some frankly degenerate combinations you can try with this card. Lieutenant Surge's strategy into Xerozic's Machinations into Delinquent leaves your opponent with no cards in hand. Magneton can grab 3 supporter cards and knock itself out, setting up the entire combination. Historically, there have been limited ways to discard your opponent's entire hand in GLC, so I have some concerns about this card. I hope a ban is not necessary, but time will tell for this card. Let's end the set review with some closing thoughts. Grass, Dark, and Metal got some upgrades to existing decks. Water and Fighting decks have some new Pokemon to build around. Psychic and Dragon decks got some game-changing cards with potential to change the meta. Control decks, especially Lightning variants, got an upgrade in Xerozic's Machinations. Night Stretcher makes a case to be played in many decks, especially aggressive ones. Most of the trainer cards in this set have some use or niche, which is good to see. Overall, Shrouded Fable is an above-average set for its size, and I'm excited to build new decks around these cards. Will Dusclops break the format? How will Kyurem and Xerozic's Machinations perform? Only time will tell. As always, thanks for watching, and let me know what you think of Shrouded Fable. Peace.